Have you ever made a choice, and then later, you kind of stop and think, wait, why did I do that? We all like to think we're in the driver's seat of our own decisions, right? But the truth is, there are all these invisible threads pulling us in one direction or another. So today, we're going to untangle those threads. We'll use the incredible work of influence expert Robert Cialdini as our guide to really see the hidden architecture of choice.
And this, right here, is the question at the heart of it all, from Cialdini himself. It's about catching that moment, that split second, that separates a real, conscious choice from just an automatic reaction. And throughout this explainer, we're going to figure out what it really means to be moved.
You know, the world is an unbelievably complex place, and to deal with it all, our brains have to take shortcuts. Cialdini calls them cues. They're usually super helpful for making quick decisions, but here's the catch. Those same shortcuts can become levers that can be pulled to influence our behavior without us even noticing.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the invisible cues that set the stage for everything. Then, we're diving into 4 of the big ones: the pull of the crowd, the power of authority, the urgency of scarcity, and the consistency trap. And don't worry, we'll finish by building you a personal shield of awareness to handle it all.
So, let's start at the most important moment, that very first yes. It's usually not some big, thought-out decision. No, it's more like a tiny crack in the door, a small agreement that happens way before our defenses are even up. But what are we really saying yes to?
Well, that first yes is never just a simple yes. It's a whole mix of things. You've got Amos Tversky, who showed how it's all about how the choice is framed or presented to us. Then Solomon Asch proved it's often a vote for just belonging to the group. The brilliant Daniel Kahneman explained it's really just a gut feeling that our logical brain makes up a story for later. And B.F. Skinner, he saw it as a learned habit, the path of least resistance. So the takeaway here is, our first yes is never simple.
Building on that idea of belonging, let's jump into our first major principle, social proof. This is that powerful, almost magnetic pull to do whatever we see other people doing. It just feels normal. To put it simply, when we're not sure what to do, we look around to see what everyone else is doing. It's basically a survival instinct. I mean, think about it. You're in a new city, trying to find a place to eat. Are you going to pick the empty restaurant or the one that's buzzing with people? Of course you pick the busy one. We just assume the crowd knows something we don't.
And this is where we see the two sides of the coin. On one hand, social proof can be a massive help, right? Like picking a product because it has thousands of great reviews. But on the other hand, it turns into manipulation when it's just pressuring you to conform, to silence your own gut feeling. It makes you feel like disagreeing is a betrayal of the group.
So here's your defense. This is your mental shield. Before you just go along with the crowd, take a second, pause, and ask yourself this. Is this a real, genuine consensus, or is it just a loud illusion? Because so often what looks like a powerful norm is really just a vocal minority that's amplified because everyone else is silent.
All right, next up is a principle so powerful it can actually override the pull of the crowd, and that's authority. We're taught from day one to respect authority, so we often obey automatically whenever we see the symbols of credibility.
And the key word there is cues. It's not always about real expertise, it's about the appearance of it. Think about an actor in a lab coat selling toothpaste on TV, or an influencer with a fancy title giving financial advice. Those symbols, the coat, the title, can flip our obedience switch, and we just trust the message without ever really thinking about it.
This is where we have to draw a hard line. Real, legitimate authority welcomes questions. A true expert isn't afraid of being challenged. But manipulative authority, it demands blind obedience. It makes you feel stupid or even guilty for questioning it. Its whole goal is to take the responsibility off your shoulders and put it onto theirs.
So this is your defense. When you feel that pressure from an authority figure, you have to ask yourself this one question. The famous Milgram experiments show just how easy it is for good people to do harmful things when they think they're just following orders. This question snaps you back to reality and reminds you that you are always responsible for your actions.
Now let's talk about a principle that basically creates a fire drill inside our own heads: scarcity. You know, the limited time offer, the only 2 left in stock pop-up. Those aren't just bits of information. They are emotional triggers designed to make us act now and think later.
And we've all felt it. When something is rare or we think it's about to disappear, we suddenly want it more. That's the basic idea. But the real power of scarcity, the real danger, it isn't just about desire. It's about something much deeper. It's about how scarcity literally hijacks our brain. It creates this intense tunnel vision that just completely clouds our judgment. It pushes us into a reactive panic mode,
We stop thinking and we start grabbing. Behavioral economist George Lowenstein has a great way of describing this. He calls it the hot-cold empathy gap. Scarcity throws us into a hot state where we're all emotion, all urgency. To make a smart choice, we have to find a way to get to a cold state, where we're calm, logical, and can actually see the big picture.
So here's how you cool down. The next time you feel that frantic urge, that FOMO kicking in, just pause and ask this. Are you genuinely excited about the thing itself, or are you just terrified of losing the chance to have it? That one question separates real desire from the panic of scarcity. Okay, our last big principle is maybe the trickiest of all, because it turns our own desire to be a good, consistent person into a weapon against us. It's called commitment and consistency. Once we've made a choice, especially if we do it publicly, we feel this incredible pressure to stick with it, no matter what.
And here's how the trap gets sprung. It always starts with a small, easy, seemingly harmless yes. Then, you're encouraged to make that commitment public. Tell your friends, post it online. Now your identity's on the line. So you start telling yourself a story to justify that choice. And that makes it almost impossible to say no to the next, much bigger request. You're not just agreeing anymore. You're being consistent with who you now believe you are.
So how do you break out of this trap? You have to ask yourself this. If changing your mind is treated like a failure or like you're flaky or foolish, you're probably being manipulated. A healthy, ethical situation always gives you the freedom to evolve, to get new information, and to change your mind without being punished for it. So after going through all these powerful forces, what's the point? The goal isn't to become a cynical person who distrusts everybody. Not at all. It's about building what Cialdini calls a quiet armor, just a simple awareness of how these levers work so you can take back true ownership of your choices. And here it is, your own personal toolkit, a cheat sheet for empowerment. For each principle, you can see the hidden emotional trigger it taps into and the shield question you can use to pause and think. Social proof hooks into our need to belong. Authority, our need for guidance. Scarcity plays on our fear of loss. And consistency leverages our deep need for a coherent story about ourselves. This is your guide to making choices that are truly your own. And in the end, it all boils down to this one final question. When you feel that pull, that urge, that pressure, just stop. Take a breath and ask yourself, if the crowd wasn't watching, if the expert wasn't nodding along, if the clock wasn't ticking down, and if I hadn't already said yes before, would I still choose this? That question, more than anything else, gives the power and the choice right back to you.